The hatchling that should not exist. Dawn did not belong to the valley anymore. It came as it always had, spilling pale gold across the distant peaks, sliding slowly down stone and ash, touching what remained of the world below, but it felt unwelcome, like light intruding on something that should have remained hidden. Nothing moved. No wind stirred the broken trees. No birds sang. No insects dared to hum. Even the smoke that rose from the earth did so reluctantly, thin gray strands twisting upward as if unsure whether to remain or fade. The valley was quiet. Not peaceful. Not calm. Wronged. As though the world had paused and forgotten how to begin again. At the center of that stillness sat a human. He did not belong here. Not anymore. Not after what had happened. Kale sat against a jagged piece of stone, his body slumped in a way that spoke not of rest, but of endurance. Every breath he took was shallow, uneven, dragged through lungs that burned as though they too had been scorched from the inside. His clothes were torn, scourged, darkened with soot and blood. His hands, they were worse, blistered, split, angry red where the skin had burned away, raw flesh beneath barely holding together. His fingers trembled, not with fear, but from exhaustion so deep it had become part of him. And yet, he did not move. Could not, because of what he held. Wrapped carefully in what remained of his cloak drawn close against his chest, as if the world itself might try to take it away, was something that should not have existed. Something fragile. Something impossible. Something that by all rights should have died the moment it fell from the sky. The hatchling shifted weakly in his arms. Too small. That was the first thing Kale had understood. Even without knowledge, even without experience. This creature was wrong. Not just different. Not just injured. Wronged. It should have been larger, stronger, whole. Instead, it fit within the span of his arms like something unfinished, its body curled inward, wings drawn tight as though trying to make itself smaller, to hide from a world it had never asked to enter. Its scales shimmered. But not like metals. Not like armors. They moved. Silver at first glance, but beneath that surface, colors shifted faintly. Pale blue flickered along its spine. Soft violet pulsed near its chest. At times, the color seemed to fade entirely, leaving the hatchling looking almost translucent like a reflection caught in glass. Unstable. Uncertain. Its breathing came in short, uneven bursts. Too fast. Too shallow. Each inhale seemed like a struggle, each exhale a fragile victory. And sometimes, it stuttered, paused, as if the simple act of continuing was too much. Kale tightened his hold slightly, careful not to press too hard against the fragile body. "I've got you," he whispered. His voice was rough, worn, like something dragged across stone. "You're all right, just stay with me, that's all you have to do." The hatchling made a faint sound. Soft, broken. Its head shifted weakly, pressing against his chest, as if seeking something it didn't understand. Warmth. Presence. Something steady in a world that was. Kale exhaled slowly, lowering his head just a little so his forehead brushed lightly against the creature. "I know," he murmured, "I know it hurts." The heat coming from the hatchling flickered again. For a moment it surged, sharp biting enough to make his skin tighten with pain. Then it faded. Too quickly. Too completely. The creature shuddered. Cold. Then hot again. Then neither. It wasn't natural. Kale had never touched fire before, not like this, but he knew enough to understand that fire did not behave this way. Fire didn't hesitate. It didn't falter. It didn't fight itself. But this was something else. Something broken. Something trying and failing to exist. Kale adjusted his cloak, wrapping it tighter around the hatchling's small form, shielding it from the open air. "There," he said quietly, "that's better." The hatchling stilled. Not completely, but enough. Enough to keep breathing. Enough to stay. Kale leaned back against the stone behind him, letting his head rest for just a moment. His eyes drifted closed, not in sleep, but in that thin space just before it, where the body begged for rest and the mind refused to allow it. Because the moment he let go, Even for a second, it would be over. He knew that. He had seen it. He had tested it. And he would not make that mistake again. His eyes opened slowly, drawn inevitably back to the memory he could not escape. The sky had broken. That was the only way to describe it. Not storm, not lightning, not anything natural. It had split. A jagged line of light tearing across the heavens, glowing with a color that had no name. It wasn't white, it wasn't blue, it wasn't anything Kale had ever seen before. It was wrong. The air had changed the moment it appeared. Heavy, charged, the kind of pressure that pressed against your chest, that made your skin prickle as though something vast had suddenly turned its attention toward you. Kale had been walking the ridge above the valley when it happened. He had stopped, because something deep inside him, something older than thought, had whispered that this was not something you ignored. That this was not something you survived by pretending it wasn't there. And then, it fell. At first he thought it was a star. A fragment of light torn from the sky. But it didn't move like once. It twisted, shifted, as though it resisted the fall. As though gravity itself had to fight to pull it down. It burned but not with fires. The light around it flickered, unstable, shedding fragments that vanished before they could touch the ground. Kale had watched, frozen, because something about it felt alive. And then, it hit. No explosion. No thunder. Just a heavy, unnatural collapse that sent a ripple through the earth. A shockwave that cracked stone and split soil in jagged lines that spread outward like a broken mirror. The world held its breaths. And Kale ran. He didn't think, didn't question, didn't stop to consider how dangerous this was. He just ran. Down the ridge. Through the trees. Over roots and stone. The air grew hotter with every step. Not steadily, but in bursts. Waves of heat followed by sudden biting cold. Like something couldn't decide what it was meant to be. By the time he reached the valley floor, the forest was already burning. Trees cracked and split, flames licking upward in jagged, erratic bursts that died as quickly as they came. And at the center, a crater, not deep, but wide. The earth fractured outward from it, blackened and scorched in uneven patterns. And there, at its heart, it lay, small, broken, alive. Kale had stopped at the edge, every instinct screaming at him to turn back, to leave, to forget. This was not his world, not his place, not his problem. But then, it moved, a faint twitch, barely visible, and a sound, soft, fragile, a cry. Kale's jaw tightened. Damn it, he muttered, and stepped forward. The memory snapped away as Kale shifted slightly, the present rushing back in around him. The hatchling stirred in his arms. Its breathing hitched. For a moment, it stopped. Kale froze. His heart slammed against his ribs. No, he whispered sharply, no, stay with me. He adjusted his grip quickly, pulling the hatchling closer, pressing it gently against his chest. Hey, come on, you're okay, you're all right. A faint flicker of heat pulsed from the creature. Weak, unsteady, but there. The hatchling exhaled a soft, broken sound. And then, it breathed again. Kale let out a shaky breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Yeah, he murmured, voice quieter now, that's it, just like that. He swallowed, forcing his hands to steady. You're not allowed to quit, he added softly, not after all this. The hatchling shifted faintly, pressing closer. Seeking. Always seeking. And Kale, he stayed, because he had learned the truths. The hard way. The first time he tried to put it down. It had almost died. He hadn't known. Hadn't understood. He had set it gently on the ground, just for a moment, just to rest his arms. And everything had gone wrong. The heat inside the hatchling had surged violently, flames bursting from its body in uncontrolled waves. It had cried, louder than before, sharp and desperate, as if something inside it was tearing itself apart. Kale had panicked, grabbed it again, burned himself in the process, and just like that, it had calmed, not healed, not fixed, but stable. Enough. That had been when he understood. It wasn't the cloak. It wasn't the shelter. It wasn't anything simple. It was him. Something about him kept it alive. He didn't know why, didn't understand how, but he knew one thing with absolute certainty. If he let go, it would die. So he hadn't. Not since. Not once. Kale shifted slightly, ignoring the sharp pain that flared through his side. Something was wrong there. Broken, maybe. He didn't care. Didn't matter. Not compared to this. The hatchling stirred again, its head lifting weakly. Its eyes opened. They were not what he expected. Not fierce. Not burnings. They were soft. Clouded. The same shifting colors as its scales, swirling faintly as they tried to focus on him. And for a moment, just a moment, it felt like the creature saw him. Not as heat, not as shelter, but as something more. Kale smiled faintly. Hey, he whispered, still here, huh? The hatchling let out a small, warm breath against his chest. Alive. Still alive. The ground trembled. Kale's smile faded. Slowly, he lifted his head. At first, he thought it was his imagination. Exhaustion. Pain. But then it came again. Stronger. A deep rolling vibration that moved through the earth and into his bones. His body went still. The air shifted. Pressure building. Heavy. Oppressive. Kale's gaze lifted. To the sky. Clouds gathered where there had been none, pulled together by something vast. The sunlight dimmed, swallowed by shadows that moved unnaturally fast. And then, he saw them. Shapes. Massive. Cutting through the sky. Wings. Too large. Too many. Kale's breath caught. No, he whispered. They circled high above, their silhouettes dark against the growing storm, moving with purpose. Searching. And then, descending. Kale's heart slammed against his ribs. Run. Hide. Move. Every instinct screamed at him to get up, to flee, to do anything but sit here holding something that clearly belonged to them. His muscles tensed. His body shifted slightly. The hatchling whimpered. Soft. Fragile. Afraid. Kale looked down. And everything else stopped. He exhaled slowly. Yes, he murmured. His grip tightened, gentle but firm. I'm not going anywhere. The sky darkened further. The shapes grew larger. Closer. Each beat of wings sent pressure crashing down over the valley, bending what remained of the trees, stirring ash and dust into spiraling winds. The air burned. Not wild. Not chaotic. Controlled. Ancient. Powerful. Kale did not move. Even as fear clawed at his chest. Even as death descended from the sky. Because the creature in his arms was trembling. And he knew, if he let go, even for a second, it would die. So he stayed, alone, at the center of a broken valley, holding something the world should never have allowed to exist. As the sky fell, and something ancient came to reclaim what had been lost. The truth no dragon spoke. The sky did not darken. It was claimed. Clouds did not gather, they were pulled, dragged into place by something vast enough that the heavens themselves seemed to obey. Light bent around it, air thickened, the valley already broken now felt small. Insignificant. As though it existed only because something greater allowed it to. Kale felt it before he fully understood it. Pressure, not just around him. Inside him. A weight that pressed against his chest, his lungs, his bones. Every instinct he had, every piece of him that had survived this long screamed the same thing. Run. Hide. Survive. Because whatever was coming was not meant for him. The ground trembled again. Stronger this time. Dust rose in soft spirals around him, ash lifting into the air as though trying to flee before he could. Kale didn't move. Couldn't. The hatchling shifted weakly in his arms. Its breathing hitched. Kale's grip tightened instinctively. "I've got you," he murmured, though his voice felt small in the growing weight of the world. "I'm here." The creature pressed closer. Seeking. Always seeking. And Kale, he stayed, even as the sky opened. Not like before. Not broken, but parted. A path carved through cloud and light as something descended. Slowly, deliberately, each movement controlled. Each motion absolute. The first dragon broke through the cloud line like a living mountain. Massive, wings stretching wide enough to swallow the horizon, scales dark as obsidian, catching what little light remained in dull, dangerous reflections. Its eyes burned deep red, ancient, watching. Then another's, and another's. Shapes filled the sky. Different, each one vast, each one powerful, each one terrifying. Some gleamed like polished steel, others burned faintly with internal heat. One moved like a shadow given form, its edges indistinct, as though it did not fully exist in this world. They circled, not chaotic, not wild, controlled, watching, searching, and then they saw the center of the valley. The humans, the hatchling. Kale felt it. Their attention, sharp, heavy, like a blade resting against his throat. His heart pounded. His breath came faster now, shallow and uneven, his body betraying the fear he refused to show. Because if he moved, if he broke, if he let go, the hatchling would die. And that was not something he could allow. Not anymore. The hatchling whimpered softly, its body trembling against his chest. Kale lowered his head slightly, pressing his forehead gently against its small, fragile form. "It's okay," he whispered, "just stay with me." The heat around it flickered again. Unstable, but less violent, less desperate. Because he held it. Because he stayed. The dragons above shifted. The circle tightened. Lower. Closer. The air burned now, not wild, not chaotic like before, but controlled. Intentional. The kind of heat that spoke not of destruction, but of power restrained. Judgment. Kale swallowed. His throat was dry. His body screamed at him to bow. To lower his gaze. To submit. But he didn't. Because if he did, he might drop the hatchling. And he would not risk that. So he stayed exactly as he was. Sitting, holding, waiting. The wind changed. It didn't blow. It stilled, as if something had commanded it to stop. And then, everything else followed. The circling dragons slowed. Then stopped, hovering, watching, waiting. For her, the sky split not in violence but in authority. Clouds parted, drawn aside like curtains before a throne. Light broke through. Not soft, not gentle. Gold, blinding, absolute. And from that light, she descended. The dragon Empress. She did not fall. She did not dive. She arrived. Each beat of her wings was measured, controlled, yet powerful enough to send ripples through the air that bent the world beneath her. Light clung to her scales, not reflecting, but belonging, as though the sun itself had chosen her as its vessel. Gold, not the dull gold of metals, not the pale gold of dawns. This was deeper, richer, alive. Every scale shone with inner fire, patterns shifting faintly across her vast form like molten rivers beneath a surface that could never crack. Her eyes, they were suns, not metaphor, not exaggeration. They burned, bright enough that looking directly at them felt like staring into something that could erase you simply by noticing you existed. Ancient, endless, unforgiving. She descended slowly, and the world bowed. The other dragons lowered themselves midair, wings dipping, heads turning, not in fear but in recognition. In submission to something older, something greater, something absolute. Kale couldn't breathe. Not properly. Not anymore. Every instinct, every fragment of survival he possessed, screamed the truth into him with brutal clarity. This is death. Not the kind you run from. Not the kind you fight. The kind you accept. Because it is inevitable. Because it is final. Because it is deserved. His arms tightened around the hatchling. Not out of defiance. Not out of courage. But because he couldn't do anything else. The hatchling stirred weakly, a faint broken sound escaping it. The Empress stopped. Midair, her wings spread wide, holding her in place as though gravity itself had forgotten its role. Her gaze fell on them, on the humans, on the hatchling, and the world. Stopped completely. The pressure that followed was not physical. It was existence. A force so vast it pressed against Kale's mind, his thoughts, his very sense of self. He felt it try to understand him, to measure him, to decide. And in that moment, Kale realized something terrifying. He was not being seen. He was being judged. The Empress lowered. Slowly, her massive form descending until the ground cracked beneath her weight, stones splitting, dust and ash rising in silent clouds around her. She did not rush. She did not hesitate. Every movement was deliberate, unavoidable. She landed, and the valley broke beneath her. The ground fractured outward, cracks racing through the scorched earth, trees collapsing under the force, stone crumbling as if it had been waiting for this moment. Kale flinched, but did not move. Could not. The hatchling pressed closer, its body trembling now. Not just from pain, from something deeper, something instinctive. It knew, even in its broken state. It knew. Kale swallowed. His voice, when it came, was barely more than breath. Hey, it's okay. The Empress stepped forward. One step, the earth shattered beneath it. Another, and the air grew hotter. Not the unstable heat of the hatchling. Not the erratic, flickering burn that came and went. This was steady, constant, absolute, the kind of heat that did not need to prove itself. Because it was. Kale lifted his head, slowly, against every instinct he had, and looked at her. For a moment, just a moment, he forgot to be afraid. Because she was, beyond anything he could have imagined. Not just large, not just powerful, beautiful, in a way that hurt to comprehend, in a way that made everything else seem smaller. Less. Her scales caught the light in shifting patterns, each movement revealing new depths of color, new layers of something that wasn't just physical, it was ancient. Timeless. Her presence filled the valley. Not just space. Reality. As though everything around her existed only in relation to her. And then, she spoke. You. The word was not sound. It did not pass through the air. It appeared. Inside Kale's mind. Inside his bones. A single syllable that carried weight, command, and inevitability. Kale's body went rigid. His breath caught. The pressure increased. Demanding, expecting, requiring an answer. He swallowed. His voice shook, I didn't steal it. The words felt small, meaningless, but they were all he had. The Empress did not move, but the heat around them rose. Not violently, not suddenly, but steadily, as if the world itself was tightening. Waiting, speak truth. The command struck like a hammer. Not loud, not forceful, but absolute. Kale clenched his jaw, forced himself to breathe, to think. I found it, he said, voice rough. It fell from the sky. Images flashed behind his eyes. The fracture, the fall, the crater. It was alone, he continued, hurt its fire was wrong. The hatchling shifted weakly. As if remembering. Kale tightened his hold. I tried to leave, he admitted, quieter now. I did, I knew this was mine to interfere with. The heat flickered. Listening, judging, but it would have died, he said. Simple, honest, final. Silence followed. Heavy, unyielding. The Empress stepped closer. The distance between them vanished. She lowered her head. Massive, terrifying, until her eyes were level with him. Kale's breath stuttered. His body screamed at him to look away, to lower his gaze, to submit. But he didn't, couldn't, because the hatchling was still in his arms. If I let go, he said quietly, it burns itself. The Empress's gaze shifted. To the creature, then back to him. If I hold it, Kale continued, forcing the words out, it calms. Silence. Then, something changed. Subtle, almost imperceptible. The Empress leaned closer. Not toward him. Toward the hatchling. Her gaze sharpened. Focused. And for the first time, she truly looked. Not at the surface. Not at the form. But within. And she saw it. The fracture. The instability. The core that twisted against itself. Power moving in ways that should not exist, energy colliding instead of flowing. Wrong. Broken. Dangerous. Among dragons. Unforgivable. Her gaze hardened. You know what it is. Not a question. Kale hesitated. Then nodded. It's different, he said, but it's alive. A mistake. A dangerous one. The air ignited. Not inflamed. In intent. Among my kind, the Empress said, her voice cold, now distant. Such a creature is an abomination. The word struck like thunder. The hatchling whimpered. Kale's grip tightened. And something in him broke, not in fear, in refusal. Then your kind is wrong. Silence. Absolute. The sky itself seemed to recoil. The dragons above stilled. The world held its breath. Because no one spoke to the dragon Empress that way. And lived. The heat surged. This time not controlled. Not calm. Fury. Ancient. Unforgiving. You dare. She began. And stopped. Because the hatchling moved. Weak. Fatting. Its breathing stuttered again. Its body trembled. And without thinking, without hesitation, Kale leaned forward, pressing his forehead gently against its small head. It's okay, he whispered, stay with me, please. The flames around them softened, not gone, but quiet, as if listening, as if responding. The Empress stilled. Her fury paused, because she felt it, saw it, the impossible truths. Her fire rejected the child, but the humans stabilized it. Something ancient stirred, something buried, something she had not allowed herself to feel. For a very long time, her gaze lifted to him, and when she spoke again, her voice was different, not softer, but deeper. Why? The question hung between them. Simple, impossible. Kale blinked. What? Why, she repeated quieter now, do you protect it, knowing what it is? He looked down, at the fragile creature in his arms, at the small broken thing that should not have survived. His answer came without hesitation. It chose to live. Silence followed. Long, heavy, and for the first time, the Dragon Empress did not look at the abomination. She looked at the humans. The whisper that changed the sky. Silence fell. Not the fragile silence of a wounded valley. Not the hollow quiet that follows destruction. This was something deeper. Something older. A silence that existed because something vast had decided that, for this moment, nothing else was allowed to exist. The wind did not move. The dragons above did not shift. Even the faint crackle of dying embers across the broken land faded into nothing. Because the dragon Empress was thinking. And the world waited. Kale did not move. Could not. His arms burned from the strain of holding the hatchling, muscles trembling beneath skin already damaged and raw. His body screamed for rest. His lungs burned. His vision blurred at the edges. But he held on. Because the small, fragile weight in his arms still breathed. Barely. But enough. Enough to matter. The hatchling shifted weakly, its head pressing faintly against his chest, as though seeking reassurance that it had not yet been abandoned. Kale lowered his head slightly, his voice softer now. "I'm still here," he murmured. "I'm not going anywhere." A faint breath. Warm. Unsteady. Alive. The Empress watched. Her vast golden gaze did not waver, but something within it had changed. The fury was still there. The power. The authority. But beneath it, something else. Something that had not been present before. Something fragile. Dangerous. She lowered her head. Slowly. Not in aggression. Not in dominance. But in a closeness. Her massive form cast a shadow over Kale, the heat of her presence wrapping around him like a living thing. The air shimmered, bending under the intensity of what she was, what she represented. And yet, she did not harm him. She did not strike. She simply looked at the hatchling, at the small, broken creature that lay between them. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, the Empress spoke. "I cannot save it." The words were quiet, but they broke something far greater than silence. Kale froze. His breath caught sharply in his throat. "What?" he whispered. The Empress did not look at him. Her gaze remained fixed on the hatchling. "I have tried," she continued. Her voice did not tremble. It did not falter. But something in it shifted, as though each word carried weight she had never intended to bear. Before it was taken, before it was lost, I felt the fracture within its core. Her eyes dimmed slightly, not in power, but in something closer to memory. To save it, I gave it my fire. The valley seemed to tighten around her words. Kale's grip on the hatchling tightened. "And it rejected me," she said. A pause. A breath. The more I gave, the faster it burned. Kale looked down at the hatchling, at the faint flicker of unstable heat that moved beneath its shimmering scales, at the way its breathing still stuttered, even now. He swallowed. "That's why," he whispered, "that's why it's like this." The Empress did not respond, but she did not deny it. Her gaze lifted then, slowly, to him. "To my kind," she said, "it will die." The words were not cruel. They were not angry. They were certain. A truth that had existed long before this moment. A truth that could not be changed. The hatchling let out a faint, broken sound, as if it understood, as if some part of it had always known. Kale's chest tightened. "No." The word left him before he could stop it. Not loud, not forceful, but absolute. The Empress stilled. Her gaze sharpened. "You deny truths." "I deny that truth," Kale said, his voice rough, strained, but steady. "It's still breathing." The hatchling shifted weakly, as if responding, as if holding on. "It's still here," he continued. "That means something." The Empress studied him, not as one studies an insect, not as one judges something insignificant, but as one examines something unfamiliar. "You have no fire," she said. Not mockery. Observation. No power, no magic, no understanding of what it is. Kale exhaled slowly. "Maybe not," he admitted. He looked down at the hatchling, his expression softening. But it doesn't need fire. The Empress did not move. Then what does it need, she asked. Kale hesitated. Just for a moment. Then, he answered, it needs someone who won't let go. The words hung in the air. Simple, fragile, humans, and yet, they did not break. They did not fade. They remained. The Empress did not respond immediately. But something in the air shifted. Something unseen. Something old. Slowly, very slowly, she lowered her head further. Closer, closer than before, until the distance between her and the hatchling disappeared. Kale held still, every instinct screaming at him, every part of him aware that he stood at the edge of something he could not understand. But he did not pull away, did not retreat, because the hatchling needed him, and he would not abandon it now. Not here, not in front of the one being in existence who could decide its fate with a single thought. The Empress moved closer still, until at last, her brow touched the hatchling. The moment it happened, the world changed. Heat surged outward, not violent, not destructive, but immense. The air trembled, light bent. The very fabric of the valley seemed to strain under the weight of something ancient connecting once more. Mother, child, power, blood, for a brief suspended moment. They were ones. The hatchling's body arched faintly, a weak sound escaping it. Its scales flickered. Silver, blue, violet, then gold, just for a second. Just a glimpse. And then, gone. The Empress inhaled sharply. Her eyes closed, and when she spoke, her voice was not that of an empress, not that of a ruler's, but something far more dangerous, something far more real. Aetheris. The name was soft, barely a whisper, but it carried weight. History, meaning. Kale stilled. Aetheris, she repeated. My child. The hatchling stirred. Weakly, but undeniably. Alive. Kale felt his throat tighten. The Empress pulled back slowly. Her gaze lingered on the small, fragile creature for a moment longer. Then lifted. To the sky. To the dragons that watched from above. Waiting. Judging. Expecting. Her voice, when she spoke again, was no longer soft. It was vast, carrying across the valley, across the mountains, into the sky itself. To my kind, she said, this child is a flaw. A murmur rippled through the watching dragons. Low, uneasy, unstable. Another ripple. He should not live. Silence followed. Heavy, expectant, because that was the truth. The law, the way of their kind. Kale's heart pounded. His arms tightened instinctively around the hatchling. Because he knew. This was the moment. The decision. Life or death. The Empress lowered her gaze. Back to the hatchling. Then, to the humans. And something in her eyes changed. I name you, she said. The words carried weight. Authority. Power. The kind of power that shaped reality. Not abominations. The world held its breath. But air. The sky broke. Not in light. In shock. The dragons above shifted violently, wings faltering, formation breaking for a single impossible moment. Gasps. Growls. Disbelief. It was not just unexpected. It was impossible. Kale stared. He didn't understand. He couldn't, but he felt it. The weight of what had just been spoken. The hatchling, no, Aetheris, was no longer something to be discarded. Something to be erased. He was chosen. The Empress turned her gaze fully to Kale. And for the first time, there was no judgment in her eyes. No fury. No distance. Only something deep. Something ancient. Something grateful. And you, she said quietly, who held what even I could not. Kale's breath caught. He braced himself. For punishment. For consequence. For the inevitable cost of everything he had done. Because nothing like this came without a price. The Empress lowered her head. Slowly, deliberately, until her vast form bent. Before him, the world shattered. The sky itself seemed to recoil. The dragons above erupted into chaos, wings beating, voices rising in disbelief. Because this did not happen. Not ever. Not in any age. The Dragon Empress did not bow. To anyone's. To anything. And yet, she did. Before a human's. Kale couldn't move. Couldn't think. Couldn't understand what he was seeing. I entrust my child to you. The words fell like a decree. Not a request. Not a plea. A decision. Final. Absolute. Kale's voice failed him. I don't. You will go where I cannot, the Empress continued. Her voice was steady now. Certain. You will give what I could not. Kale shook his head slightly. I'm just human, she finished. Not dismissive. Not mockings. Acknowledgings. And that is why. The hatchling stirred. It's breathing steadier now. Stronger. Warmer. Alive. The Empress looked at him one last time. Stay with him, she said softly. And he will live. Kale swallowed. His arms tightened instinctively. I won't leave him, he said. The words came easily. Because they were already true. The Empress closed her eyes briefly. Then, she rose. The world shifted with her. Power returned. Presence. Authority. She was no longer just a mother. She was the Empress again. Ancient. Unyielding. She spread her wings. And the sky answered. Wind roared. Clouds split. Light broke through once more. And her voice carried across the heavens. Let no flame touch them. The command echoed. Absolute. Binding. Every dragon in the sky stilled. Then, one by one, they lowered their heads. In obedience. In acceptance. In recognition. Of a future that had just changed. Forever, the Empress rose into the sky. Golden light trailing behind her like a falling star. And then, she was gone. The pressure lifted. The world breathed again. The valley remained broken. Scarred. Burned. But something had changed. Something new. Kale sat there. Still. Silent. Holding the small, fragile creature in his arms. He looked down. At Aetheris. At the being that should not exist. That should not have lived. That now carried the future of dragons. The hatchling shifted. Its eyes opened. Clearer now. Brighter. Alive. Kale let out a slow breath. Yeah, he murmured softly. I guess it's just us now. The hatchling pressed weakly against his chest. Warm. Steady. Alive. And for the first time since the sky had broken, Kale allowed himself to believe. It might stay that way.